Hello everybody, today we're going to be doing a quick how to make a part tutorial. This should be a relatively fast video where we only cover how you go from modeling a part to creating a part file for it and seeing how it works within an assembly. So for this demo, I'm actually going to be modeling a torch igniter off of the injector. So I'm going to open up the injector layout file just to show you what I'll be working on, and then I'm actually going to be modeling the torch igniter within Lower Plumbing's file. And this isn't necessarily the way it should be organized. This is for the sake of demonstrating how modeling can be done with linked bodies. So again, not necessarily a fully correct method, but it's for demonstration's sake. So right here we have the this little interface pad thing, bolt pattern, and then a hole that the torch igniter will feed its exhaust into the injector and into the chamber here. So chamber, and then this is the injector for Rocket 4. It's a mock-up. So this is the layout file for the injector. I'm going to open up Lower Plumbing stuff. So let's type in L4 asterisk, and then we'll see all the layout files for the rocket. I'll pull up Lower Plumbing's, and there we go. We can see that this this interface connection port thing is there. It's actually clipping into this oxidizer tube, so I might end up hiding that, but otherwise we can see the rest of the layout file for Lower Plumbing. We can see the fuel tank up here in red. We can see the engine, and in fact, this engine should be hidden. So actually I have a few of the reference assembly things displaying when they shouldn't be. Only the linked bodies that I brought in earlier should be displaying, which are the fuel tank and the injector. So there you go. This is what we're going to be working with. We're going to be basing our torch igniter model off of this interface here. But like I said, I'm going to hide these tubes for now, and I'm actually going to hide a bunch of other stuff because it might just get in the way for us. So I'll go into the part navigator. I made a feature group for these struts, these little strut mock-ups. I'm going to just hide all of them. I'm also going to hide this manifold. If I organize this a little bit better, this process would go faster, but for now it's fine. And I will in fact hide these linked datums, at least for that one up there, because I won't be needing it at all. All right, but let's get into modeling. And again, I'm within the Lower Plumbing layout file just to demonstrate how it will work with basing a model off of a linked body, or basing a body that you're modeling off of a linked body. Not necessarily where this torch igniter should belong from a organizational standpoint, though. I'm going to keep this relatively simple. Let's say we're going to use the same, did that catch on? Probably not. Let's say we're going to use the same radius for this little torch igniter that we have for this interface flange thing. So yeah, and then let's keep it really simple even, and have the, have the nozzle for the torch igniter within the same extrude. And we're actually going to keep this boolean to none. I don't know, it'd be weird if we had the torch igniter unite with this linked body. So make sure this boolean, whenever you're basing off of a linked body or building off of it, modeling off of it, keep that boolean as none, so it creates a new body. And let's make this 3 inches. Okay, cool. And again, this is very rough modeling. I would not recommend. Actually, let me do it a little bit differently. Yeah, I would not recommend modeling this stuff in the way that I am. I'll do another video where I do more proper modeling method for this stuff. But I'm just going to cap off this little torch igniter by extruding up another cylinder and uniting it with the pre-existing one. So I'll change that to unite. I will unite with this, I guess, the nozzle section of the torch igniter. And then we'll make this like an inch. I don't know. There you go. So we're left with this cylinder. I'll gonna make these colored so you can actually see, or actually let's make it a feature group. That's probably the right way to do it. We're making feature group to separate out the modeling we're doing for the torch igniter from everything else in lower plumbing. That's similar to what I did for the struts here. It helps with organization, and since this is a discrete part, it's a discrete entity, body, from the rest of the stuff in lower plumbing, it makes a little bit of sense here to do. So I'll just call it torch igniter with an E. Okay, and there we go. And we can choose to hide it if we like, or collapse it, or expand it as we see fit. So moving on, let's model a few other things here. I think importantly, let's model the bolt pattern. But first, I'll assign a feature color to this. Let's say a nice rose color, and I'll even I always forget the proper way to change the color of the body. But let's go into View, Edit Object Display. I'll select this here. I'll change it to be that rose color. And then I'm even going to up the translucency just so we can see the internals and see that bolt pattern and the rest of the injector. There you go. Nice. So within this feature group, I'm actually going to, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to do a whole, or let's do a sketch actually. Let's do a sketch. I'm going to make a sketch defining this bolt pattern based off of the bolt pattern on this interface flange on the injector. So let's say we're going to have bolts go through the entire torch igniter. So like you can imagine your bolt head here, and then a bolt go all the way through and down into this flange where it threads in or whatever. So we would want the hole to go through the entire torch igniter. So let's make this sketch to define that bolt pattern up here. So now that we're here, I'm going to just do project curve, and I'm going to, let's say I want to hide this torch igniter actually, just so I can easily see that bolt pattern. And then I'm just going to pull out these curves, these circular bolt holes from the injector face. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm projecting all of those onto this sketch that I made, and it pretty much just pulls that profile up onto the plane that I defined my sketch on. And that makes it pretty easy for just going in with a point tool and selecting the center of each of those. You can really, actually, this is a little bit more convoluted than you would need. You could technically just avoid using that project curve and just select the center of these circles, and it will automatically define that point on the plane that you're working on. But you know, this works as well. This sketch is also within this feature group, which is good. Actually, is it? I don't think it is. Let's make it within this feature group, so when we hide the feature group, we can hide this sketch as well. I will now use those points we defined with the hole tool. I'll select on the sketch, and I will select instead of threaded, let's do counterboard actually. And instead of custom, we'll do screw clearance. And then I define the screws, I believe, as number 10. Doesn't really matter for the sake of this example, but With counterboard, we can sink in the bolt head into the part a little bit, which is pretty neat looking. And the depth is going to be through body, so we can get these screws down all the way to the end of the torch igniter. And this is a very weird looking part. I don't think a torch igniter should necessarily be designed quite like this, but that's fine. That's okay for what we're doing. So yeah, let's say this is fine for our purposes. I'm going to pull that hole back into the feature group by just dragging it and dropping it into the feature group, because before then it was outside of it and wouldn't necessarily be included within it. But let's say this is good for what we want. This is a good start and is enough to make a part from. So now we want to break this body into its own part file within lower plumbing, so that it is included within the lower plumbing assembly, and other files, other subsystems can see this and possibly interact with it if they see fit. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to the assembly navigator, and I'm going to search for the L40004-500 file within this file tree here, which I can see at the bottom right here. Let's unhide that for now and see what we're dealing with. Which right now the only things in this lower plumbing assembly file are the two propellant tubes and then the manifold. So these three items right here, and now we're going to include in this torch igniter within that assembly. So to do that, I'm going to make this assembly, this -500 file, the work part. So now I'm within this assembly file. That's what I'm changing whenever I do anything now. You can actually tell up here, it says what you're in, what you're actively working on while you're within the -100 file. So that'll give you a bit of an indication of where you are within the file tree. But we're not done yet. We're going to want to go into assemblies, and we're going to click new component here. And this is pretty much the same as creating a new part file or a new file altogether. It'll bring up the same file creation prompt window as you are probably used to seeing when you do file new item up to the left. But we're going to define the ID number as L40004 because we are making this torch igniter within the lower plumbing subassembly. And then we're going to call it -005 because we've created part files up to 004. So we're incrementing one up from there. And then for the name, I'm going to say torch igniter demo. Cool. And then keep it as modeling and inches. Click OK and click OK. And now you created a new part file within this assembly. And this will also be populated in the Teamcenter as well. Now I'm going to move into this part file and click Make Work Part and move into it, and you'll see that this is now the bold white, or if you're using light mode, the bold black font. And you can also see that you're within the torch igniter demo in the assembly, which is another good indicator. So now that we're in here, we're going to pull in this geometry that we made, this torch igniter geometry, into this part file. And we'll do that using the wave geometry linker tool. So we'll click on that, and then we'll click on this torch igniter body, and it'll highlight it, and it will say that we properly selected a body here. If you wanted to, you can also select a bunch of different types of things within your layout file. It's likely that you won't always need to do that though for making a part. Maybe you might want to select a routing object I guess that's possible. But otherwise, you want to select a body, which we just did. So I'll click OK, and now you can see that this changed color a little bit. It's a little bit more saturated. That means that you actually linked in that body. If I go into Part Navigator, you can see now that we have that linked body here as we wanted. So now that that's done, I'm going to quickly save that file to lock that change into place, and I'm going to move back up into the assembly for lower plumbing, and you'll see that that torch igniter is there again, and I can move back up into lower plumbing's layout file and hide out all the assembly file stuff, and you're still left with the torch igniter as we defined. And if you remember, I hid a bunch of stuff which we can unhide now if we wanted to. So there you go. That's your part. And now let's do a little bit of messing around to see how things worked with it, or how things are going to propagate throughout the rest of the file system. So I'm going to open up L4 and then the assembly file for the entire rocket to see if it updated, to see if that torch igniter is now within the rocket. And yeah, there it is. That happened because I had this loaded, or I have both the assembly file for the torch igniter and then also the the assembly file for the rocket loaded. It might be possible that you need to go, if you want to see this change, this torch igniter change within the rocket assembly file, you might want to go into assemblies and then go into more and then load inner part data. You might want to click that in order to force that change to make its way up to the rocket assembly file. But it depends, and you may or may not, depending on how your files are loaded. Nothing changed in this case, though, as expected. And then real quickly, I'm going to actually mess around with changing this this injector model a bit to see how the igniter responds to it. So I'm going to go into this hole, and I'm going to change its diameter to, let's say, 1 inch. I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to save. I don't think saving is necessary in this case for seeing that change to propagate, but I will save regardless. And if we wanted to, we can. Actually, I'm going to just hide this the injector for a second so I can get in there and measure it. Let's see. The radius is 1/2 inch, so the diameter is 1 inch, which is what we wanted based on the change we made. That's good. And if we go into here, we can also see, yeah, it looks like it's about 1 inch wide. So that's cool. But what if we don't have this, let's say we don't have things loaded properly, what happens then? I'm going to restart and play around with it a little bit to get it into a right load state. Let's do that. Okay, so I restarted. I'm going to make a quick change to this this igniter flange again. Let's in this case, let's make it a little bit wider. So instead of being like 1.5 inches in radius, let's make it 2 inches. Okay. And one thing to note, I don't have the lower plumbing layout file loaded at all. It isn't something that will probably see this change automatically. So I'm going to close out of this. Let's close it. And then I'm going to reopen the layout file for this guy. Let's see. Let's first check out the radius for this this new connection. Its diameter is 3 inches, which is the old diameter. It should be 4 inches now, I believe. Or actually, yeah, it should be 4 inches. So what I'm going to do to fix this, and this is probably something you should do every time you open up your layout file with intentions of making changes to stuff. You should always pretty much go into the more category and in assemblies, and then click this load inner part data, and hopefully this should be able to bring in that new change that I made to the igniter or the injector. And there it is. You saw it just jump up to be a little bit bigger. So with that change, not only did the injector update, it also brought the igniter with it, so that that also increased in diameter. And if you were clever and you did things properly, you can also have your bolt pattern. Or I guess in this case, the bolt pattern is based off of the injector, but things can respond to the changes you make in other files using this linked body system. And even if you want one more thing, I'm just going to bring up the rocket vehicle assembly file again, just to show the final change made. This should also technically, or wait, oh, there it is. Oh, I guess it also updated in here as well, because technically we have this assembly file loaded in. So everything is updated. You might just have to do this load inner part data to force updates to happen to your layout file if changes were made elsewhere that you don't have loaded. So I recommend clicking this button every time you open the layout file with intentions of doing some modeling. But I think that was it. That's how you make a part and break it into its own part file, and some good maintenance for making sure things load properly. Let me know if you have any questions about this. Hope this was useful. See ya.